All right, it's an exciting day because we have nutrition expert Vicky Boulay with us to talk about fat in the diet. So, can you help us decode whether or not fats are good?
Well, fats are great. Fats are really important. So look, there's a few major nutrients you need out of your diet. Macromolecules, we call them. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And people need all three of them. And we need to make sure that we get them every single day in our diets. So fats are really super important. They're the lining of all our cell membranes. That lipid bilayer is made out of fat. Fat stores insulate our bodies. They help us absorb foods that have fats in them. They help us make our hormones. All our sex hormones are made out of fat. If you didn't have them...
I thought they were proteins.
Well, there are hormones that actually are proteins, but our sex hormones are steroids.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so without fat, humans wouldn't be on the planet. Fat has been a really important molecule in our evolution. Good fat stores allowed people to make it through...
You don't have any fat stores.
I do have a few here. Fat stores helped humans make it through cold winters. If a woman was pregnant or breastfeeding, it was super important to have fat stores, especially when food was not easily available.
Yeah, but some people think that if you eat too much fat, you clog your arteries.
Well, eating too much of anything is probably going to make you sick, but you need a certain amount of fat in your diet. And people do get clogged arteries today, but I'm not convinced that this is because of people eating too much of one thing like fat. I think the clogging of the arteries that people are experiencing today is really a result of eating a Western diet, which is very high in fats, white sugar, and white flour. So I think that combination is really what's making people sick, not just eating high-fat foods. And so French fries have a lot of fat in them. I just cooked some mushrooms here in some olive oil, and they have some fat in them now too. So eating cooked foods that are sautéed in fat, a little bit of butter, a little bit of oil, is a great thing because that's going to make the
and
vitamins.
These muffins too? Did you cook them in
These
fat?
are made with coconut oil, which is a really super good, healthy fat for people that has been demonized by the food industry as a bad fat. But I think that coconut oil is really actually quite good for us, as other fats are too.
But so, like, some folks I know just got a NutriBullet for Christmas, and now they're excited because they can drink their kale.
Right, so they drink kale in a NutriBullet, which means they take kale, which is this beautiful green vegetable, and they...
Where'd that come from?
This comes from our CSA, which is Community Supported Agriculture. So we get a share every week now with a big bag of all these locally grown organic vegetables.
Aren't you growing that in the greenhouse, though?
We do. We do have some in the greenhouse, too.
So you get double duty. You could drink the kale.
You can drink kale, but it's not... I would never drink kale, for one thing. Kale, I think, is a food that is really super great to eat. And the reason I think it's important to eat it is because what you do is you cook it in some oil. And there's lots of fat-soluble vitamins.
What does that mean, fat-soluble? What do you mean?
Like vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin E are fat-soluble vitamins, which means that they don't dissolve in water. They dissolve in fat. So if we want to eat them and get them into our bodies, then we need to dissolve those fat-soluble vitamins in a fat source. So if you chop up your kale and you cook it in a little bit of oil, you saute it in some oil, the vitamins that are in these leaves will actually be able to dissolve in the fat that you cook it in, and you'll be able to get all those vitamins. When you eat this in a NutriBullet, that NutriBullet's going to digest it pretty nicely so that you drink it in a shake. But the availability of these fat-soluble vitamins are not going to be there.
Because there's no fat for them to dissolve into.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I would never drink kale. I would only cook it and eat it. and cook it in a nice oil, like a vegetable oil, like olive oil is a great oil for cooking it in. Coconut oil has a really great taste, although it's very, very expensive. Even butter makes kale taste really good. And it's not okay to put a whole, couple tablespoons of oil and fry it, like deep fry it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about simply sautéing it lightly in oil.
Like you did with those mushrooms?
Yeah.
What do you got in the oven?
Just one more batch of these muffins that I'm making for Laura for breakfast.
Mmm.
So these have coconut oil. They're made of 4 different types of flour. Almond flour, oat flour, rice flour, maybe 3 kinds. And coconut oil. So there's no gluten in them. There's no white sugar in them. We use honey for sweetener. There's lots of carrots in it, coconut, and raisins.
All right, so one last thing I have to ask you. Well, maybe 2.
Okay.
So some fats are liquid at room temp, and some are solid at room temp.
Yep.
And then there's something else called trans fats or hydrogenated fats.
Right.
So let's say you go to the grocery store and you buy something and it says it has hydrogenated oil in it.
Right.
What does that mean? And
So, okay.
what does that mean for your health?
So let's talk about the fats for a minute. So here's
I'm really shaky. I gotta figure out.
here's our
this thing
olive
better.
oil. Our
That
olive
doesn't
oil is a liquid at room
Right.
temperature. All oils that come from plants, almost all of them, are liquid at room temperature. Some of them are solid, like the coconut oil. And then here's an oil or a fat that's from the grocery store. This is called Crisco. And Crisco is actually...
You have that in your cabinet?
I do. Laura bought it to make pie crusts, so we still have it in the house. But I don't use it, but it's a great thing to teach about. So what's the difference between this oil and this oil? They both come from vegetables. But in order to make this oil turn into something solid at room temperature, is they had to hydrogenate it, which means they chemically change those long fatty acid chains. They whack out the double bonds between the carbons, and what that does is it makes a liquid fat, a solid fat at room temperature. I would tend never, if I can, to eat these. I never eat food like this. If you're going to eat foods that are chemically treated, if the fats are chemically treated, and these are called trans fats and hydrogenated oils, those are the fats that you're going to use to build your cell membranes. And if you're using fats to build cell membranes that are faulty in any way and not strong, then you're opening up your cells to disease.
Is butter, because butter is also solid.
Butter's a solid at room temperature.
So is
because-
that hydrogenated?
No. Butter is made from an animal fat. It comes from milk. And animal fats are solid at room temperature. So butter's actually got
That butter looks good.
Butter's got a really bad reputation. But everybody, for years, for the last 30
Butter.
years, butter's been, we've been told that butter's really bad for us. But we know today that butter's actually quite good for us. In moderation, just like anything else, in moderation. And it tastes really good too. But it's much better for you than hydrogenated oils and margarine. If you have a choice between butter and margarine.
Is this what you're having for dinner?
We're having a salad
That looks yummy.
with a little bit of feta cheese and some sauteed mushrooms. Yep.
So your assessment of fats, overall, good for you in moderation. Is
Yeah.
that
I think that fats...
non-hydrogenated,
Yeah.
avoid a Western diet?
But I think one thing that we have to be really careful of is fried foods have way too much fat in them. Eating fried foods on a regular basis isn't good for anybody. If you have French fries once in a while, I think that's okay. But fried foods, even if it's eggplant or chicken, whatever, fried foods are something that should be avoided because that has way more fat than we need.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.